Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Secret Origins of Mint Condition. I am your host, James, and a little bit behind the scenes on the podcast. Sometimes it takes days to put together an episode, sometimes it takes weeks, sometimes it takes months. But in the episode's case, it took years to put this podcast together. So, this is one of our cornerstone episodes we've been trying to do since the beginning of the podcast. And thankfully, we're finally here to give you the definitive history of Hawkman. So, joining me for that deep dive is Joe.
Thank you, James, and hello, folks. How you doing?
And of course, we have our two expert Thanagarians. Possibly need to be an expert in ancient Egypt as well, depending on where we're going with this. But
Yes,
joining us
that's true.
is Jack Adrien.
Hello, everyone. My pleasure to be back.
And Keith Tarnowski.
Hello, fellow winged wonders.
There you go. Winged wonders.
So before I basically turn it over to you two to talk about this, I'll just give a little background as we were kind of diving into before I hit record. My introduction to Hawkman was probably the Kenner Superpower action figure and his appearances on Challenge of the Super Friends. And then after that, whatever JSA comics I happened to read, that Hawkman also happened to appear in the with Jeff Johns writing it at the time, because his run is the only run I've read. And then Jack, my other great Hawkman appearance is when Michael Shanks of Stargate SG-1 played him on Smallville, which is amazing that Hawkman appeared live action on Smallville. And then after that was Legends of Tomorrow, where Hawkman and Hawkgirl appeared. And that is my understanding briefly in the first season. Then they got rid of it. I guess the CG was too much for the wings.
Probably, yeah.
So that is my exposure to Hawkman, which I feel like is incomplete. Oh, I have also read Hawkworld, which I'm sure you guys will touch on as well.
We have an entire podcast, folks.
We have
about
an entire
Hawkworld.
Podcast about Hawkworld, audience. You can go back to listen to that.
Please.
So, trying to figure out how to structure this podcast, given my limited understanding of the character, because it'll be probably a knowledge dump, getting exposure to this character from me and maybe some of our listeners. Is it too much to start off the conversation with just giving who is Hawkman? Does that launch us too deep into the deep end of the ocean if we start there, or can we do who is Hawkman before we launch into the history of Hawkman?
I'm one of the few people who I don't think his history is really that complicated. I think it's really people kind of overcomplicated, because one of those urban legends in any kind of thing where there's comics or movies where people say it enough and they think it's really that complicated. It really isn't. There's really been two Hawkmen with various retcons to each, but Daredevil has retcons to him, and so does Superman or this one.
It's
two Hawkmans. That's really it. Have there been other ones that maybe opposed this Hawkman for a minute, or they retroactively, said someone wasn't? But I think that can be said for most characters. I don't know, what do you think, Jack?
No, Keith, I think you're spot on. I mean, James, to touch on your question, is on one level, Hawkman as the idea kind of falls in the same kind of complexity as anyone coming to the DC universe. And so you start, character was created in 1940, Gardner Fox, and then essentially you have the Earth 1, Earth 2 kind of dynamic. But again, anyone who's used to DC Comics would understand what that means. Anyone who's coming new to DC, and again, most people post-Crisis on Infinite Earths may or may not even understand what that means. And I think to Keith's point, on one level, this is one of those situations where, irrespective of the editorial miscarriage that has been allowed to happen, they did a pretty okay job of streamlining the origin and the character with all of the retcons that have happened. And on one level, you can say, you know what? It works.
Yeah, I would argue that after the New 52 and then the subsequent Rebirth and everything that's happened in the last few years, every character is as messy as Hawkman now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Superboy, Superman,
my
had
God.
a son thing, like the age and all that, like they're all just Wally, Barry. What happened in between that? Like
Red Hood. Yeah.
Red Hood. Yeah.
Oh, jeez. Right.
Well, maybe we can dive into it also this. Well, one, I appreciate you guys starting off that way, because it kind of, calms the waters of, like, if we're going to be doing this deep, convoluted history dive that's no more convoluted than any other character's history in the DC universe at this point. But maybe we should start with, like, why like I said, I correct you. I read Hawkworld, and then on Joe's recommendation, I read the Robert Venditti series that recently came out, which was just trying to tie everything together,
yes.
everything together, and make it a cohesive storyline. But maybe let's start with like, I don't dislike the character; it's just not a character I was drawn to. But maybe we can start with like why you guys like Hawkman, and we can kind of spawn from there. But Joe, what is you have the longest experience with the character?
I pulled a lot of books to show as we go along, right? But the one I forgot to pull was my first Hawkman comic book that I purchased in August of 1966. I think it was number 12, but I could be wrong. I'll check that later on for the information we'll put on this website. Yeah, I was drawn to it. Keith and I have talked about this. I think the visual is incredible. He's a really cool, visually looking character. Unlike, he doesn't have a cape. He's got wings. He's just a cool, and the beak and the helmet and the wings, and also Hawk Girl is also a cool looking character. So that's what, when you're 10 years old and you're looking at all this stuff, and you want to move on from Superman and Batman, and you like them, but you want other stuff. Well, I discovered the Flash and Aquaman and the Atom and Hawkman, and holy cow, this is really cool. So for me, it was just pow, the look. That's what drew me in.
The design got you.
The design got me, yes.
Because he always reminds me of, like, I guess a barbarian with wings type of character.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
But I think he's more sophisticated than that. But we'll see. Like, Jack, what like going back to the days of Mint Condition, you did a whole comic book bull session on Hawkman. So what drew you to the character?
Yeah. So before the episode we discussed, I think my first introduction visually to the character was Challenge of the Super Friends. He's there marching along with all of the other superheroes, and he appeared in a few episodes here or there. Ironically, they did not necessarily pair him with some of his well-known Rogues Gallery foes or anything like that. He was just kind of there, I think, to kind of flesh it out. But I used to read, when I was younger, All-Star Squadron, and that also tied into the Justice Society of America. And so that's really kind of where I became interested in the character. And the thing that I used to love about the character is he was always half-cocked. I mean, the pure savagery of the character, and just primarily just due to the fact that he has a mace. And so a mace only has one function, and that is to just lambast something or someone.
Bludgeon people, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so there was no subtlety in the way he fought. There was no subtlety in the way that he approached problems. He was always just kind of just this side of in control. I think more so in the Silver Age, much more so than the Golden Age. But I, like Joe said, perhaps one of the most visually dynamic characters. Not only was he pretty much bare-chested, but he would have the claw over the boot, which again was one of those visual things that you just made you stop and pause. Whereas Batman has got his boots, and Superman has got his red boots, and Wonder Woman's got the white stripe. He actually has a yellow claw going from the top down, covering kind of the tip of his boot. There was just, I thought, a lot of thought and consideration in the design of the character that I felt really had a lot more to offer as far as an identity. And again, going back to the retcons, I appreciate that DC, through the many writers, have actually taken the time to create a functional, if not somewhat complicated, but no more so than any other DC character, backstory for him that makes you go, oh, I can buy that.
Yeah. No, I who is the person who designed Hawkman originally?
Gardner Fox.
Gardner Fox. Oh, okay.
Gardner Fox was the writer, and Dennis, I don't know, I have to look this up. Dennis Neville was the original artist.
Okay.
But early on, Sheldon Moldoff took over the art choice on Hawkman in the Golden Age. Yeah.
So Dennis Neville is what you said?
Yep.
Dennis Neville.
First appearance in Flash comic number 1.
Number 1.
So he's the one who gave him the basic look. He's the designer of the character. I see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. No. Well, it's always good to shout out the original creator, the designers of something, because they get lost in the sands of time. Yeah, I wouldn't have known it,
especially so many years later. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Keith, do you share the design of the characters? What drew you to him, or what brought you?
It's funny for me. Well, first of all, I just want to say that I always found it years later, kind of funny that my two favorite characters, Flash and Hawkman, appeared in the same book. The 1930s. I just it occurred to me years later. I'm like, wait a minute, there might be different versions of them I like better, but Flash and Hawkman, that for me that'd be more of a holy grail Flash Comics #1 than even Showcase #4.
Yeah.
But for me, I mean, I always thought he looked great visually, but my first exposure was in Justice League International, which I love that book more than anything. But man, did they make Hawkman an unlikable, like kind of like a stuffy shirt. Like he had no
Yeah.
sense of humor. He was just super like a stereotypical, especially back in the '80s, like kind of tight butt conservative kind of guy. You know what I mean? He had no sense of humor. He had no patience for Booster and Beetle. So I didn't really like him. And then years later, many years later, I saw what was Jeff Johns was doing with him in JSA, and then the first couple issues of Hawkman, and I was very intrigued. I loved it immediately. But what really hooked me on the character, because of that book, I went and I tracked down Hawkworld, which is obviously a different version of the character. It's the updated, Thanagarian version, the upgraded Silver Age version, and that's what made me a fan for life. I love both Hawkmen, but the Thanagarian version, especially the Hawkworld version, but I do love the Silver Age version as well. That's what got me. I love how they fleshed out the character. They made him different in the way from Carter Hall, in the sense in that he's less savage and more thoughtful and more compassionate than the Earth Hawkman. In fact, his she never became his wife in the Hawk world in the current continuity, but Shayera Thal is definitely more of the badass and more of the kind of tough on criminals than Qatar is. And I just love that dynamic. Don't get me wrong, Qatar is still a great character, a complex character, but he had more compassion, more heart, and more sympathy, which I really, really enjoyed about the character. So, while I love the Earth Hawks and the Thanagarian Hawks, I love the Thanagarians a little bit more. So yeah, that's the book that really did it for me, Hawkworld.
So is the split in the history the introduction of Hawkworld, basically? Is this where things get messy? Is Hawkworld?
Initially, so they had the Earth, when the pre-crisis, you had the Earth 1 version, which was the the reincarnated Egyptians and all that, and that whole JSA and all that, and the Justice League had the Thanagarian version, the married couple. I mean, the Earth Hawks are married too, but the married couple police officers from space coming to Earth to study the police methods of Earthlings. And then what happened was the crisis happened, and like everything with DC, it took them a couple years to catch up, to kind of making everything make sense on the Earth. Because for about 3 years, the Silver Age Hawks were still prancing around on this mixed Earth. In fact, they were the Hawks on the Justice League International, and then Hawkworld came out after that, and then they just kind of retconned it, saying that after Hawkworld was so successful, they wanted to have an ongoing. Instead of saying that Hawkworld took place 10 years later, what they did was they just had them come to Earth today, which made things a lot. That's where the trouble came with the continuity and all that. But again, I would argue that really people make a bigger deal out of that, because it was quickly retconned that any of the Hawks that you saw with the Justice League and all that post-crisis in between Hawkworld really ended up being Thanagarian spies that were posing as like Carter Hall's son. And while that's cheesy, there's tons of stuff in comics that are cheesy. That really should have been the end of it. Right. John Ostrander explained that in that Escape from Thanagar story in Hawkworld. It really should have been kind of neat. It's one of those things where people keep on trying to fix something that's already fixed, and they kind of keep it out there in the ether. But really, no matter what happens, even the stuff Vendetti did, the story's still the same. Like Vendetti did some great stuff, but he didn't change anything. He just made it that they're all like reincarnated versions of each other, even throughout like space and time. But essentially, you can ignore that or not ignore that. That could be the same as it was before. He didn't really change anything, really. But no one, even Jeff Johns, he did a beautiful retelling of the history of them. But all he did was just polish up what Ostrander did in the 80s.
So, I mean, I think to touch on Keith's point, I mean, I think the easiest way to, at least for me, and it's the easiest way to kind of reconcile Hawkman and Hawkgirl, and that's a whole other thing, because she has her own life outside of the comics, and which is really good. She'll be out in the Superman movie, and she also featured very prominently in Justice League International, and so that is, I think, at least the modern iteration, that is where most people kind of have an understanding of the Thanagarians and their role. But it's like Doctor Who. I mean, it's if you were to look at, Hawkman like Doctor Who, it's essentially a very easy thing. You just accept, well, they're all the same person, except, there are, for them, it's regeneration is the magic kind of, bullet that kind of allows you to sit back and suspend your belief, to actually accept this new actor. And in many ways, by having the reincarnation as being a foundation of the character, it then allows you or any writer, any editor to pretty much make any type of story consistent with whatever it is they want to say. Because once you start off with that foundation, that there was, the Egyptian couple that, are reincarnated, in each lifetime, and then you have an opportunity to see them in different forms or fashions, and that was later expanded. It doesn't necessarily have to be temporally related to even Earth. It can be many different forms, and they went back and further retcon that retcon. It again, my perspective is, if you can accept Doctor Who and go, okay, yeah, I can buy that. Hawkman is really just about as easy to sit back and go, you know what? Okay. It doesn't really force you to think, well, this doesn't make sense, because it's just kind of like, all right, if I know where this person is and I know where that person is, then I can accept that the two of them can exist, and only one of them is really the true reincarnation that is consistent with how the storyline has been laid out.
And if you really, it's kind of the one thing that might get a little confusing, but is people wonder, well, who was the Hawkman on the JLA then, post-crisis? Who filled that role? And basically what they did was very simply, they made the Golden Age Hawkman, Carter Hall, also the Silver Age Hawkman. He just joined the Justice League, at one point in between. And that's it. That's really the only thing. If you want, what I recommend to everyone, the most simple comic version, origin of Hawkman, you pick up right here, Hawkman number 15 by Jeff Johns. In the first few pages, he breaks it out beautifully, and is rendered by Rags Morales, who is...
Yeah, the first 4 pages, right? Something like that?
Oh, yeah, it might even be less, because the first one's more like a Shay kind of like narrating. But yeah, first like 3 or 4 pages, it's beautifully rendered. Like he has... I love Rags, Hawkman, Hawkgirl, and Hawkwoman. He explains it so perfectly there, and really none of that has really changed. The Vendetti stuff expands it in a beautiful way, where he's just like, he's reincarnated in space and time, on Krypton and all this, and it really adds to it. But it doesn't, what's beautiful about that, it doesn't take anything away from the Johns and Ostrander stuff, which really is the Ostrander stuff, because Johns just told it very clearly in a few pages, and but he really is kind of just polished up what Ostrander did. One thing I'd like to say though, like that isn't kind of related, but still, to me, like almost even more than Hawkman, Hawkwoman, Shiera, is probably like my favorite. Like I love Hawkman, all of them, but there's something about Shay, that red hair, that little more badass, kind of like stubborn, but also, vulnerable. How she kind of like hides that, like that version, especially the one Jeff Johns wrote and Dave Gibbons wrote in like the Ranthanagar War. Like I love that character. It reminds me very much of the JLU Shay.
Yes, that's the I was going to say that's how I'm familiar with her from that, because she was the main character for that for all those seasons.
Wonderful character like that. Again, I love Hawkman. He's like my second favorite character. But man, it's something I would buy a Hawkwoman ongoing like in a second. And I love how she makes a comment, I think, in issue 15, because I reread it last night. The whole arc, the Thanagarian arc, 15, 16, and 17 by Jeff Johns. And she makes a comment like, I'm Hawkwoman, no self-respecting officer would call himself Hawkgirl.
Well, to ask I guess a question, because I have not steeped in the lore or the comic books as much as you guys are. So obviously we had Crisis that shakes everything up. The Hawk World, Carter Hall, or Cartar Hall, is the comes to Earth, and he is they're Hawkman and Hawkwoman at that point, right? They're the new ones. So do they and I guess they get the regeneration thing?
No. That you're talking about these two, right? This is the Silver Age. That's that first appearance.
Yeah, so they're gone after they're gone after Crisis. Right. Like in post-Crisis world, we have the Hawk world, Hawkman,
the updated versions of them.
Yes, but they don't reincarnate like the previous
no,
ones, right?
No.
Okay.
There's the police officers from Thanagar.
Yeah. But that's one of the reasons. And so it was, my friend Pete. He's the one because, again, after Crisis happened, obviously there was Man of Steel, there was the George Perez Wonder Woman with Themyscira, and one of the things that I was interested in is this new Hawkman, and because I was just kind of curious as to, well, how would that happen, and so again, great run, and I would collect the comic for a while, and then I actually, when it became Hawkman, then they introduced the whole thing with the Hawk God, and this is where I think some other writers started to then try to make it, too clever by half. I think they were almost overthinking it, and so I think the challenge is always how to really kind of look at what the common thread is in the character, as opposed to some of the outliers that some writers have done. But again, I think, Keith has said this. Anyone who reads comics has to confront that at any given time, because there will be one writer who will just take the character way off the deep end, and then someone else has to rein it back in. And so that is no more, no less than anyone else.
But also, I mean, look at like how do you another example of like how they're all kind of the same. How do you reconcile Batman 0 year with Batman Year 1? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
well, you know what we're talking about now, History of Hawkman. I think is it next week or the week after the new History of the DC Universe comes out.
It's today.
I think it is today because
it is today. Okay,
because I'm in the States now, and I'm like, I can go to a comic book store.
No, that's right. It's today. So a lot of what we're saying here may actually be apocryphal by the time we get to
it. Exactly.
So we'll
it's apocryphal by the time I get from the comic store to the time I get home. Okay.
Mark Waid posted earlier on Instagram about like his 4 releases today, and I believe one of them is the new History.
Yeah, it is.
I haven't gone yet. I'm probably gonna go tomorrow because he even mentions like having to like like they're reconciling like the they're somehow trying to and I don't know if this is true or not, but if I misinterpreted this, but they have to reconcile the Jeff Johns origin of the Justice League with Darkseid and Cyborg, but also try to like make that work with the original origin with the Sorrow and all that. So there's a lot of, I feel like everyone's been Hawkman, like have been given the Hawkman treatment now.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That's what I'm going to call it from now on, the Hawkman treatment, because one of the things I always talk to James about is it's Star Trek. The Chekhov. Every iteration of Trek has a Chekhov, and that is in Deep Space Nine, it's O'Brien. The O'Brien must suffer. In Voyager, it's Harry Kim. There's always got to be that one character who just physically has a bit more abuse, maybe even dies. I don't know. And so, for comics, we're going to call it the Hawkman treatment.
There you go. I like that.
It's everywhere now. I mean, like,
exactly.
You really think about any character after the New 52 changed things so radically, and then they changed it back. But then there were things that they liked that they had to keep. Like Jonathan Kent and this, like a bunch of different things. Like, oh, we want to switch it back because we prefer that pre-Flashpoint continuity, but we like this, that, and this. So trying to like make that all fit. I think Hawkman's actually a pretty good metaphor for the DC universe as a whole. I mean, all they do is, in order to simplify everything, they make things more messy constantly. Let's just change everything, reboot it, but then we want to go back. So let's make it more complicated and go back. And they do that over and over. And Hawkman's kind of like leading the charge with that,
Yeah.
Not to. I don't want to derail our Hawkman conversation, but just for point of rep, because I just kind of read things on Hoopla as they're available, and where we are, what universe of DC are we're post like what Rebirth? Are we where like the continuity that Mark Waid is writing, which is very bold for him to write a definitive history of DC, because it seems like at a drop of the hat they could be like, that's another Crisis. We're gonna just blow this universe up again. But
on the other side, he was on the crime scene when the original Injustices happened. So there is just a hint of hubris there. I think he's just trying to be kind of like the Marv Wolfman maybe of this generation, but he wasn't. He's kind of to blame with some of it. Just wanted to put that out there.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, he's not.
He was there during Crisis, 0 Hour, Infinite
exactly.
Crisis.
He's the one who introduced the Speed Force, which I don't think is a bad thing. But I mean, he had his own take on things, and he insisted that, I think Superman Birthright was also him.
Definitely.
So I mean, a bit of hypocrisy. I can't let us go forward without mentioning that. So
I will say this because it's funny. It's on topic, but I read digitally. I read Justice League Unlimited #8 today,
No
and
spoilers. I haven't read it yet.
no spoilers. But basically, this shouldn't even be a spoiler for DC. It should be like an expected at this point. They mention another crisis coming. It refers to like the event with the Absolute Universe and the DC Universe, and they're giving
I think that's what it is.
in name only, and there'll be no reboots after that.
Yeah, no, it's.
I mean, come on. Like, I don't know how they even like in a room sit and talk and say, it'd be a good idea to have a crisis.
Again,
I don't have event fatigue, but I do have crisis fatigue. Like, at least Marvel does, like, they do their events every year, but it's World War Hulk, it's Civil War, it's War of Realms, or this. At least they're different. Like,
that was the last good one, War of the Realms. And nothing since then has been good.
I'm sorry, James. We're so far off topic. What were you asking?
Well, I was asking like what was the last event that caused the current DC universe? What was it? A crisis event? Was it the absolute? Like, what was the event that's triggering our current DC continuity? Death metal? Yes, I guess death metal.
Yeah, death metal. Yeah, which I hated.
So we're living in a post-death metal world, I guess, is what I was trying to get at.
No, Dark Crisis.
Oh,
that's even worse than death metal.
That was so bad. I don't even remember it. I mean, the one thing at least death metal had was Superman with a rock arm. Yeah. And everybody looked like they were in an 80s hairband. But, Dark Crisis, that was not good.
Yeah, we're going to do a universe-shaking event called Dark Crisis. In issue 4, we're going to call it Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths. And the main villain is going to be Deathstroke. Yeah. Deathstroke? What happened to the Anti-Monitor?
I was just trying to figure out what universe we're living in now that all these characters exist in, since, we're saying now everyone's gotten the Hawkman treatment. And Hawkman's like, I got the first Hawkman treatment at this point.
He's the original.
It's really better for DC.
He's the poster boy.
Even the movies. Even the movies got to be rebooted their universe after like 6 years. You know what I mean? Like it's just like a curse for DC, and they always think the way to fix it is to like just change everything and reboot everything. But then they're like, oh, but we like this stuff we did back then, so let's go back and forth. It's like a yo-yo.
Well, it's hard, as Jeremy Adams has said on this podcast. Like he loves the continuity, but it's hard, I guess, to write. You have to really put your writer's hat on to get a story and just steer through the messiness and make the I think it's Len Wein who said continuity connects your best writer to your worst writer. So, so when you have continuity and you have stuff like that, you have to, like, whatever that writer drops the ball, wherever it is, whether it's a good place or a bad place, you have to be able to pick it up and have a concept that's going to embrace it and then move forward past it.
I'm so glad you mentioned Len Wein, because you mentioned before, I think, Keith, that Hawkman in JLI was the tight ass uber conservative, right?
Yes.
So
no sense of humor at all.
No sense of humor. But that was really started years prior by Len Wein, because the Green Arrow Rebirth had already been around for a while, engineered by O'Neill and Adams, and Green Arrow was basically the first lefty superhero, right? So they had to give him a foil, and what better foil than a cop from Thanagar? So all of a sudden, Hawkman got a personality. And in those Len Wein Justice League comic books, they were constantly going at each other. But when the chips were down, of course, they had each other's back. But, Black Canary used to have to get in between them and separate them. But those were great stories. And, Len realized, this guy with the beak and the wings, we got to give him more than a look. We have to give him a personality. And at that point, that's when I think the character started to really bloom.
Well, this is making a lot more sense for me now, because now I can just think about that the character from Hawkworld is the Hawkman we're dealing with in modern time. There's no more reincarnation.
The Hawkworld version is the Thanagarian modern version, but he's still dead. The main Hawkman in the universe is the reincarnated Egyptian prince, Carter Hall.
Oh, okay. So now that's just okay. So now we got into it. So there were two Hawkmen for a period of time.
Right.
Yeah, and they coexisted for a bit. Even because basically when the Hawkworld version came around, when that happened, the reason why they had to say that there was like some kind of Thanagarian spy on the JLI for a while is because the Golden Age Hawkman went missing with the JSA, like in limbo, fighting Ragnarok or something for a few years. So they couldn't say it was him. But then he came back, and then him and the Hawkworld Thanagarian version were like kind of side by side for like a hot minute before 0 Hour made things even more complicated.
It's like a multi-doctor storyline.
Exactly.
Okay.
And again, you timey-wimey, kind of, it's like a big ball of timey-wimey stuff.
So the Thanagarian Hawkman died at some point. Okay.
Yeah, what happened was, like Jack said before, they were overthinking things, and around 0 Hour, again, such a DC like thing. Like, let's make things a little more simple. Let's combine Carter Hall and Guitar Hall into one being, and then make that being a Hawk God. That's so much more simple.
That was the worst, and that's I got off that train, and because I gave it, I think, 2 or 3 issues, and I was like, none of this made any sense, and it was just very bad, because essentially they were trying to not only combine all the Hawks, but all of the kind of Hawk-like characters, and I think Black Condor was involved in there somehow. It was just like any character. Essentially, they were trying to create this kind of Speed Force for all of the winged characters in the idea, and it was bad. And so and so I was just like, I can't. I respect myself too much, and so I think they just went back to simplicity. But to the point that you were saying about Joe, I think it was the best writer and the worst writer. I think on one level, and I always, and this is the same thing I said even with Hawkman back, I blame editors. I think honestly, post the Silver Age, editors just really had a very loosey-goosey kind of control over, quality control over the character. And I think it's much harder when you have very well-known or very well-liked writers. You basically want to give them free reign, but then essentially you're going places where you are not even asking the question like, well, how does this consist with this other thing that we have? And I feel if you push the writer, they will find something that makes a semblance of sense. But essentially what happens is the writer is just allowed to just go on. And Man of Steel, I think, is also a good example. I think what Byrne did was great, but then, there was no Supergirl, and then there was no Superboy, and then they overcomplicated it, to the Time Trapper and the Pocket Universe, and this is where you have the Superboy that, started the Legion of Superheroes, and then you had, a new Supergirl who was Matrix. I mean, and so it's just like, oh, you're losing me. And so, again, I blame the editorial board, where you actually have to ask, how does this all work together? I'm not telling you no, but you need to at least answer some of these questions.
Yeah, I feel like I applaud trying to take big swings and stuff like that in life, not just, in stories. But again, they combined the 2 versions of the Hawk, made him like a Hawk God. But right before that, they also revealed he had Native American roots, which kind of, I forget how they explained that, because he wasn't from Earth.
Right.
Like that, the Thanagarian version was not from Earth, but apparently something with like his father came, I don't know, his father came out, whatever. I forget the whole thing. I haven't read that in a while, because like Jack said, it was a pretty forgettable story. I only read all of it because I had gotten it in back issues years later. So he's trying to reconcile now. They were really trying to make the Native American like backstory a part of his character, but meanwhile he's also like got all these different Hawkman's memories, just like Jack said too. He wasn't just the Silver Age, he wasn't just the Golden Age Hawkman and the Thanagarian anymore. He was also connected to like Hawkmen from the multiverse. Then the Hawk God combined. It was so 90s right there.
Yeah, that's the way to put it.
That's the way to put it. Yeah.
Surprised he didn't have like those pockets that like Cyclops had or something.
Yeah. I got pouches. I don't know what's in them, but yeah, I got tons of pouches.
Pouches and leather jackets.
Yeah. Well, he did have like black pants. I liked his look actually, because it was just the black pants and the longer hair.
And then he had I don't even know the kind of knife it is. I should know, because I watched Forged in Fire, but it was just kind of like, it's like just the one single blade on the one hand, and he would just thrust. It was like,
he's got the willow sword, sword that
exactly. And so it was an amazing. This is the reason I was like, oh, we're going somewhere here.
I got that cover in my stack.
They still make that like toy, like they Harlan did it.
I got a few Hawkman action figures. The wings always fall off, by the way, because they fall down and the wings break. But I have some covers I want to show you, and if they spark any memories or anything like that, chime in. But I showed you the first appearance. Here's Hawkman #1, Silver Age, 1964. And then here's Justice League 31 a few months later from #1, where he joins the Justice League. And how come he's the guy with wings falling off the table? I don't get that, but a brief showcase appearance, back to showcase for 3 issues at the end of the 70s. And Keith, we haven't spoken about this yet, but I'm sure you remember. I know we both like this series, Shadow of the Hawkman, right?
Yes, that
beautiful Alfredo Alcala inks on Richard Howell's.
I remember that.
Here's the special. Okay, and here's, of course.
Yeah.
All right. And then I'll stop with the next 2. Here's the Hawk World comic.
Yes. That's when I got that on. Here's
what you guys were just talking about. This is the worst Hawkman book of all time.
Except
for the New 52. That's what
I would say it's actually good. The first 12 issues is when he becomes the Hawk God thing.
Well, because the thing is, there's this huge mystery as to who he is. And because he doesn't have amnesia. It's just he's not responding to all of the people who knew him as either, Carter Hall or Carter Hall. And so people are trying to figure that out. And so there's this huge mystery. And like Keith said, he's got these kind of Native American kind of origins and these aspects to him. And so it's just kind of like, whoa, man, they're doing something big here. They're going bold. And they didn't. But bringing back to we were talking about DC which metal? I've so forgotten it.
Death Metal?
Yeah, Death Metal. Nth Metal featured prominently in that, and so and one of the key things that I think we've kind of overlooked, and I think this is one of the great aspects of kind of just this kind of thinking of Hawkman, the character from Thanagar, is the Nth Metal, and kind of like what that means. And the thing that I appreciate about it is it's kind of worked its way in other media. It actually featured prominently in the Supergirl show because there was a situation where there were aliens coming to Earth and they essentially had abilities that humans didn't have. And Nth Metal was, again, kind of taking away jobs from steel workers. So, I mean, I raised that as it's very similar. It's probably the equivalent of like adamantium or vibranium in the DC
you read my mind, Jack. Yes, I was just going to say
exactly. And so I think we would be remiss in not actually recognizing the importance that Nth Metal actually plays in the DC universe. And it doesn't just exist in the comic books. Other media have also kind of picked up on its importance. And so I think that's a very key aspect of the character.
In case the audience, like myself, isn't, because I know Nth Metal, but what is Nth Metal and what does it do?
This may answer my question. Go ahead, guys.
Right. So, I mean, the way they explained it in Hawk World, and so I forget which issue of it that I read, but the best explanation for it is alien metal, doesn't exist on Earth. Its properties essentially allow it to respond and react differently to some primal forces. Key of which is gravity. And so then essentially it allows the user to defy gravity. But then it also has other inherent properties that stronger, lighter, resistant to various different kinds of electromagnetism. And so on one level, it's kind of whatever the writer wants it to be. But again, very similar to vibranium, you can get away with that because since it doesn't exist on Earth, it just has all of these different properties. And I forget there was one comic, and I liked the way they explained it, and it's been years, but the nature of how they kind of explained it was something that existed in our reality, but at the subatomic level just had many more properties that it can assert that just weren't necessarily consistent with other kind of metals or other type of elements that we see on our periodic table. And I was like, well, that is at the very least some kind of explanation. I was willing to accept it because what do I know? I was a kid. So yeah.
That's a dissertation, Jack. That should get you. That you just typed it up and handed it, and you get an A+ for that. Now my question is about.
I remember that because I used to love the science aspect of comic books, and
that was a Julie Schwartz hallmark.
Exactly,
books,
and it's just kind of like someone's actually explaining the Nth Metal and why it reacts to it. It's just like bravo, and so again, it stuck with me. So
now, here's my question for our two professors. Going back to ancient Egypt, when Prince Khufu, is that how you pronounce his name?
That's the way,
and his lover, was she Shera?
Mm-hmm. Shera,
okay.
With the CH, yeah.
They're stabbed by Teth Adam, right?
No.
No, they're not stabbed.
Hatseth.
What was Hatseth? Thank you.
Hatseth Adam was Black Adam back then.
Right. Hatseth, was that knife made of Nth Metal?
Yeah, I was just going to talk about that. Actually, I was just
Okay,
literally
good. See,
when you were talking.
I wasn't sure if it was.
I believe it's a Jeff Johns addition to the origin. Basically,
I
how he kind of
believe
explained it was
so.
the he now again. I feel like Vendetti's explanation would kind of retcon that, because Jeff Johns said that the blade was forged from this metal, and that them being killed with that blade is what started the process of the reincarnation process with them.
Now
But
it's
then
coming back to me. See,
Vendetti's run, though, made it where they were being reincarnated before that event even
Right.
happened. The whole Deathbringer story and all that.
Yes.
But John's first said that was the reason why they were reincarnated. It was almost like a curse from the blade that they were, now destined to be reincarnated over and over, and always to like. Yeah, what I love about Jeff Johns' origins, his whole thing was whenever they would finally like fall in love again, then they were destined to die soon after. You know what I mean? So that was like the whole tension in his run, because Kendra just wasn't feeling it for him. She thought he was like a creepy old guy who wouldn't like kind of like leave him alone. That was always a tension, but that's why he started pushing her away at one point. He wanted to break this, the curse. But of course, she ended up pronouncing her love for him, and that during Blackest Night, and that's when they got killed. But yeah, you were right. The Nith metal was forged. The blade was forged from Nith metal.
And that storyline was later adapted into Legends of Tomorrow, because again, except it was Vandal Savage was the one who actually killed them. But again, it was the Nth metal blade, and so they needed to find the blade, I think, in order to break the curse. Again, this was season 1, kind of coming off the Flash, in Legends. But I seem to remember that was again trying to take to Jeff Johns' storyline and incorporating that, because it works. I mean, and so it's something that you can say, all right, that's fine.
Hawkman on his own cannot fly as the Nth metal, right? That lets him fly.
It's in the wings, yeah.
It's in the wings, and the wings are not a part of him. They're a.
And I prefer that. I feel like in the Superman movie, they're making the wings a part of
really?
like they did in JLU. I personally don't like that. I like them being a separate thing that they wear.
Real quick, Rex Morales, Hawkman #1.
Oh, yes.
Is it Rex Morales? The cover?
Not on the cover.
No, that's Robinson.
Robinson, yes.
Yeah, it's Robinson.
Yeah,
but that's
beautiful.
That's
cover.
Jeff Johns.
It is, and that I believe was a T-shirt. Yeah.
This is a T-shirt.
Yes, I believe they sold that as a T-shirt when that came out. I remember seeing it as a T-shirt, and I thought of getting it, and then I was just like, there's levels of nerddom even I can't.
Guys, you remember this?
Oh yeah, Ben Robb and Ryan Sook.
Or no? No, Michael Luck. I always thought it was Ryan Sook too until I pulled it out today.
What is that, Joe?
This is Legend of the Hawkman, the Fallen One. This is a 3-part story. And what is this? Does this retell the origin again?
No.
But
that's
I forgot what the story's
about. Format version. The story actually tells a story of the Silver Age Hawks, and it came out after Hawk World, so they were already, kind of retconned away. But they told a fun story with the Silver Age Hawks.
That's good. Yeah. If you see that on James on Hoopla, it's only 3 issues. Highly recommended. Beautiful artwork.
Yeah, there's not a lot of Hawkman on Hoopla.
Yeah, it's
no respect.
You got to go where the demand is.
It's more Aquaman on Hoopla than Hawkman.
Yeah. I mean, they have Jeff Johns' JSA run. They have Vendetti's Hawkman. I don't know if they have they might have the Golden Age Hawkman omnibus. If there's a Golden Age Hawkman omnibus, I think, right, Joe?
This is the archive.
I've got the Silver Age Hawkman.
Maybe that's what they have. They might have.
I'm glad you answered the question about. I wasn't sure about that knife. That again, who wielded that knife? Who was the villain there? That was someone. Hatseth. Okay. Wasn't, but Teth Adam wasn't in those stories, right? Retroactively,
yeah.
I think that they said, they're all around the same time.
Even Fate, right? Even Dr. Naboo
That's
and all
right,
that.
Yeah.
So let me do a deep dive, since this is a character I don't know a lot about. And Jackie mentioned earlier that they didn't use the villains in Super Friends, but who are Hawkman's villains? Who's he going against?
Ghost is like his
Gentleman Ghost.
Probably. Yeah, that's Gentleman Ghost is probably like his Lex Luthor. That depending on how you look at it, they don't seem compatible as far as kind of like hero and villain. But if you take the Nth metal in consideration, well, then it makes a lot more sense, because it doesn't necessarily have to obey the laws of the physics that exist. But for the Silver Age, I don't even know how he was. I mean, I would read the comics, but he was just mostly outsmarting him. But it never quite made sense to me. I was just like, this should be done and wrapped up pretty easy. I guess the Gentleman Ghost just wasn't necessarily up to the task.
I always look at the Gentleman Ghost as a major villain for Hawkman, the way I look at Mordru being a major villain for the Legion of Superheroes, science versus mysticism. And I think DC liked to do that a lot, especially back in the 60s and 70s.
Well,
so I think that's what they were doing there.
I feel like a couple of things. So I feel one of the things that I always kind of like, and I love Jeff Johns' writing, but I was always kind of upset that he got so popular so quickly, because I feel like I know he had a much longer run on Hawkman planned. I know he did, but he blew up with Green Lantern Rebirth, and then got given Teen Titans Infinite Crisis, and he left the book to do bigger things, because that was going to be like his Starman. He already had the past live issues, which was supposed to be like the Times Past issues, and Starman. He had an epic going on, and he never got to it. And I'm saying that because Jeff's like strong suit, I think, and I don't think anyone would disagree, is his villains, right? How he fleshes out these villains, and he did the best 2-part Gentleman Ghost story, I think issue 13 and 14, I think.
I gotta go back
and he explains why they're connected forever, and why the Gentleman Ghost hates Carter Hall, and it is brilliant. And I feel like if the series would have went on longer, I think he could have been like a better or even a bigger villain than, like, I guess Set has the whole, he started it all off, like they're always connected in that way. But I feel like the Ghost would have been more of like his, like Lex Luthor in a way, because it was more psychological, and it was more, he had more of a reason to hate Hawkman than Set, really. Like Set never really had the best reason to keep on coming after him life after life. They had to kind of like bake it in there later that he was trying to kill him before Carter would kill him eventually, kind of like a lame good guy bad guy thing. But the Ghost, really, if you reread those 2 issues, it's about revenge. Like, they were friends for a minute, and Carter, that savage part of him, basically set in motion a cycle of hatred and revenge that would go on forever. Because the Ghost, he's just, Carter might be getting reincarnated, but the Ghost is a dead ghost for hundreds of years, holding a grudge. And it's a great story.
Also, James, to answer your question, the Hawk World, Blythe is the kind of major villain, for the Thanagarian, Hawkman, shapeshifter. Which again,
do we mention the Shadow Thief? He's a major villain.
Oh, right? I forgot the Shadow Thief.
Who, by the way, he showed up in a '90s comedy adventure superhero series in one episode. Yeah, he was in an episode of Lois and Clark, the Shadow Thief.
Get out of here.
Was he really?
Yep. Yes, yeah. They didn't call him that, but that's who he was.
Carl Sands. Is his name?
Yeah.
Carl Sands or something like that?
Carl Sands, yeah. He was, he almost kills Lois, but of course Lois almost got killed in every episode, so what else is new? But
well, Gentleman Ghost showed up in Batman the Cape Crusader from Amazon last year.
Really? Nice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, there's a classic Joe Kubert Batman cover from I want to say the middle to late Bronze Age with Batman. I don't. There's a stagecoach involved and Shadow Thief and Batman. It's a gorgeous cover. If you can find it, I'll send you the number of the cover. But it's a great some of the best covers. Joe Kubert. We haven't really talked much about the artists, but my favorite Hawkman artist is the guy who probably drew him the least, and that's Joe Kubert. Although he did draw him in the later Golden Age. Then he did the 6 issues of The Brave and the Bold, and then they handed it off to Murphy Anderson, another great artist. But I think Kubert's Hawkman and Hawkgirl were just the best Hawkman ever illustrated. It's my favorite.
Agreed. I do like Tim Truman's take as well.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
And the reason why I liked it, and the thing that I always appreciated in that run is John Ostrander started with the limited series, and Tim Truman did both writing and the artwork. But they kind of brought it back to the Silver Age kind of science aspect. It kind of had like a kind of an Adam Strange kind of feel to it in the artwork, and that's one of those things that I think at the time. DC really didn't do alien worlds. It really didn't kind of explore that very much. It was very Earth-centric and dark side. That was about it. So
also, he made, like, I know we talk about this a lot on the podcast when it comes to like the cities and stuff like that, like Gotham or Keystone, Metropolis. But man, Truman really created a unique world with Thanagar.
Exactly.
Oh, without
exactly.
a doubt, yeah.
And
Not a
I
city in
think
the entire world, yes.
right. And so it really, and that's the thing that I loved. I'm catching up. So I'm watching Young Justice with my youngest now, and so there was that whole run where they are on Thanagar, and so you are just kind of looking to see visually how do they make this distinct from Earth, and even though it's like 1 or 2 episodes, you want to see the effort in the world building, and I think Tim Truman really actually took the time to do that.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I actually just ordered online. I got it like a month or two ago. I lucked out. I love comic book promo posters. I just think they're the best. I'd rather have them than regular posters any day because there's like these vintage cool things that are only in a shop and the art's done by comic book artists, not some regular artist out there. And I got myself. I already had from back in the day. I think I got it from Joe actually when he had the store. I got the Rags Morales Hawkman promo poster where it's from a panel of the book when he's flying through the streets and got the best tagline. It says he's lived 1,000 lives and been a hero in them all. I love that. I also got a Hawk World poster, brand new. It was like sealed in plastic, which I don't think they maybe did that back in the 80s and 90s. They don't do that now with promo posters. But I got the Hawk World one. It's gorgeous. Like it's Tim Truman art. It says as above, so below. The legend of Hawk World. So good. Such a cool thing. I wish I would have thought to take it out for the podcast, but it just kind of hit me.
Well, if you have time to if you take a picture of it, Keith, send it to me. We'll put it up on the
Instagram.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, I'll send you some of these, James.
Yeah, please do.
Here's another Hawkman #1, and this, of course, is the Vendetti and Brian Hitch. Brian Hitch is a spectacular artist, and I think he did some of his best work on this book.
You can tell he loves the character. You can tell.
Yeah. And then I pulled one more book. My favorite Hawkman cover of all time. Now, it was always Brave and the Bold 30. Okay, what was it again? 34, the original Silver Age by Mr. Kubert. But I just love this cover. That is
what number is that? Of which run?
This is the Jeff Johns Rags Morales run, number 23.
Okay.
Is that Rags Morales, Keith, or is that
not on the cover? That's Andrew Robinson, but he did the interior.
Andrew Robinson, yeah.
Andrew Robinson did a bunch of Hawkman covers, and he did a bunch of Starman covers.
These people are having a nice dinner, and this brute walks in bleeding on the nice new rug. I mean, come on. That's my favorite Hawkman cover.
That's a great story, Black Rain, too. That's basically when Black Adam recruits some Adam Smasher and I think some former villains, and they go and then take over Kandak. And Hawkman, that image of him with coming to the restaurant, like all like bloody, he just walks in. He's not the chairman anymore of the JSA at that point. I think it's Sandman, Sandy. He walks in and he finds out about them basically going into a sovereign nation and taking over. And Hawkman busts in. He's like, I'm the chairman now, and we're gonna go fight Black Adam and his team. And no one objected. They're like, okay, and they go there and they have this great battle.
He was the original chairman of the JSA, right, in the 1940s?
Yeah. Yes. But he has to give up after that because they go too far. Hawkman gets too brutal, and at the end of the story, Jay Garrick and I think Alan Scott are like, "You're done being the chairman." The chairman.
But Keith, you just reminded me, and loath though we are to have these synapses kind of connect again. Hawkman was in the Black Adam movie, okay?
Yeah. That's right, yeah.
Exactly.
That's the only good thing in the movie, by the way.
Somehow, conveniently, we've all forgotten that, okay? But yeah, I mean, Hawkman and Dr. Fate were exceptional in the movie.
Yes.
Then
they were the best parts. I mean,
exactly, and I think Dwayne Johnson was in there playing somebody. I don't really remember. The rest of it's a blur. Okay, so I think it's Aldous Hodge played Hawkman.
He was great.
Yeah, he was phenomenal.
The only thing I don't like about that version of Hawkman, the only thing, and it's the only thing I don't like about Vendetti's run, is you gotta think it's a simple, silly kind of this aesthetic thing. I don't like the wings that just disappear like he's Tony Stark with like. You know what? You're a Hawkman. Take them off. Like you physically, they're cumbersome. Whatever. I don't care. You put them places. Like they don't disappear like nanotech. I hate. Oh my god, I hate that. I hate it.
Yeah, no. Back in the '60s, an Angel would have to strap his wings
together
so he can get into a suit.
You know what?
Yeah.
He earned the power of flight. Okay, yeah,
he definitely did. Yeah, Warren
about that movie. I'm like, every time those wings came out of nowhere or went away again, I'm like,
Yeah, exactly. And the funny thing is, it's hilarious that we, sitting back, we're talking about nth metal, we're talking about reincarnation, all of this we're fine with, and it's just like, oh, they just disappear. I don't know, man. I don't know.
I totally get it. It's very like.
That's where I draw the line.
That's my line.
Big outrageous stuff is acceptable, but the details we really argue.
More like, I feel like his ship too is like too shiny and new. It should be more beat up and like it should look like not look like in the same way like the design or the colors and all that, but like almost how the Klingon ship and the Voyage Home was like kind of a beat up ship. You know what I mean? Like
Bird of Prey, yeah.
It should look like it's worn in and not like the ship that Hawkman had in the movie was very shiny and Tony Starkish and very pretty. I'm like, no. It should be a little beat, like a Millennium Falcon. It should be like a little beat up and, rough for, like I don't see Hawkman like putting that much thought into like all this like technology and prettiness. I don't know. He's a great actor and he did a great job, but like that was my only thing.
Yes.
Well, we see that Hawkgirl's in the new Superman movie, so are we assuming that Hawkman is in that world somewhere?
I hope so.
My thoughts, and I don't know, James Gunn is gonna James Gunn, but my thought is probably he will have it more like the JLU, and insofar as even the concept of Hawkman kind of made him a villain, and I think they feel that there is just a lot of goodwill from Justice League Unlimited that they probably are just gonna have the character stand on her own. Recognizing, like Keith said, I think that she is a well-known and recognized character that she can. And I think also DC fundamentally has a female problem. They're already talking about a Wonder Woman movie, but they always start to fall short as to having other main female characters. And so I don't think, if they were smart, and I don't think that they're actually going to kind of introduce a Hawkman as an idea in the new DCU, but let's see what they do.
I feel like if they do, it won't be Hawkman. It'll be if for some reason they got to go to Thanagar and there's other winged police. I do again. I love Kendra, but not nearly as much as I love Shay. I wish they would have used Shay. Yeah, she's a different character. She's a very different character. And there's a lot of great stuff about Kendra, but man, Shay's just like great. She's just more complex. I feel like her vulnerability is just more like obvious because she's obviously overcompensating, and she's just got this vulnerability and this like something about her. But visually, I mean, like it's like Batgirl. The red hair coming out of the costume is very cool. Yes, I wish they would use her, but Kendra is still cool. And like I love seeing anyone fly around with a mace.
I agree.
And you guys do you think that they'll like Green Lantern and like Hawkgirl eventually will get more like they're obviously they're wearing some kind of like Justice League costume.
They're wearing the costume because they're employed by Maxwell Lord in this movie.
Yeah.
So they're wearing Lord's because that symbol is, I think, is a symbol of his company. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they're going to get more comic accurate costumes. I
want to see her by the end of the movie, like in something more Thanagarian. And of course, I want to see Guy in a Green Lantern.
I want to see Superman without knee pads.
Oh, too soon, Joe. It hasn't even come out yet.
They've been showing a lot more images and a lot more stuff, and then I keep noticing the knee pads. I just can't not notice them. I guess I'm the people that can't unsee the briefs, right? Which I have no problem with. I can't unsee the knee pads.
In the 11th hour, maybe they digitized those out in the same way that they gave Sonic a whole new look with no teeth.
Well, Joe, maybe, and also maybe he wears a different suit in the movie at some point.
We've talked about that, right, James?
I keep thinking like at the end of the movie they'll have him in the Reeves suit. Okay. Like just go back to old school.
Go back classic.
Yeah. Did you guys hear like basically James Gunn was not going to use the trunks at first?
Yes.
You hear David Cornsweat's like his reasoning to why he thinks they work and why he should do it.
Because he wants Superman to be approachable. Yeah.
Well, because he's the most powerful being like in the universe, and if you make him look more like a superhero, people and kids will trust him.
Yeah,
he shouldn't look scary. He should look like this bright superhero, and that makes people like kind of trust. I think that's cool.
I like that. Yeah. I like that reasoning a lot.
I don't know. You wouldn't have to even explain it to me. I don't care. I want the trunks, but.
Oh wow! And my thing is, let's just be honest. I mean, take my money. I'm there. I'm watching the movie. So yeah.
Before we wrap this podcast up, is there any final Joe? You had were there any left Hawkman questions left unturned
The
before
big one was the blade that killed the prince. Let me see. Was there anything else? No, they explained everything. They explained the the whole JLI Hawkman and all that stuff. So because Keith and I have had this discussion before. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I don't think so. Oh yes, there is one. I think Keith, you and I discussed this once before. But at the end of Brian Hitch and Venditti's run, are we to believe that they only that's it? They're out of lives, right?
Until someone else retcons that, yeah, they're both on their final lives. Yep.
But they do flash forward to the 31st century, so
Yeah.
they're going to live a long life unless Mark Waid comes in and does something in this
There's a
new
crisis. And,
Yeah.
So they're down to one. They're down to their last life. Yes, I wasn't
and they're
sure
separated for some reason. I think Aquaman's in space, and he's on the JSA with Kendra back there again, which is weird.
Yeah.
You know.
That was the other big question. I should have wrote these things down. I almost forgot.
Hawkman treatment, as we like to call
well,
it.
there's always another crisis.
Yeah.
And,
Always, just around the corner.
you know,
Second
Doctor Who got more regenerations too, so
Exactly.
Before then we officially wrap up, is there any points or any highlights that Jack or Keith that you want to make before we bring this Hawkman episode to an end?
I mean, for me, it's and I like how Keith framed insofar as he said, Flash is his favorite character and Hawkman's like his second favorite character. I feel Flash has gotten his full due and again, ironically, thanks to Waid, that you had a good writer who had a clear idea and you had the artistic freedom to kind of tell a whole narrative arc and story that was consistent. And I recognize sales matter. But I feel the reason why some people find Hawkman as a character so unapproachable is because it's always fits and starts. It's always kind of like there's a good run here and it kind of goes, and then it eventually runs out. And then there's a good run here. And so on one major basic level, it's just hard to string those all together as a reader. Whereas I think with other characters, you don't necessarily have that problem. And so maybe the solution is binding all of those together in one major omnibus. But I do think it's sad that there isn't a reader who would or could consistently just kind of tell a very good and engaging story to really kind of bring that character, I think, to modern audiences in a way that I think they would appreciate. I think there's a lot to kind of talk about. And I think, again, Joe, to your point with like the staunch conservativeness, I think that would be a very interesting take, particularly on, again, a lot of the political climate of today. And how does that character exist? And so I always find that there are no bad characters; they're just bad writers, and so.
And editors, you mentioned editors before, Jack.
Yeah, well, and exactly. Well, the editor to actually have the writer, actually commit and sit back. All right, you've got to put all this together. But if you had a really good writer who had some good recognition and a very dynamic artist, and an editor who can basically say, all right, we've got to touch on all these points. Can you do it? I would love to see that, and I would support that.
Oh, I would too.
Yeah, I would read it. I would read it. Keith, any final things that we didn't touch upon or final thoughts?
Well, I just like to kind of, put it out there again that really Hawkman's not that complicated. For all intents and purposes, there are only two sets of Hawks. There's obviously other versions of characters, but that doesn't mean there's more than one, really. There's a million multiverse Supermans, but there's only one Superman, really. There's only two sets of Hawks. It's not that complicated. If you want the best, most easy to understand story of Hawkman, read Hawkworld, the miniseries, 3 issues. It's amazing. You can find it on eBay for like $5 to $10. If that, you can find
it's on Hoopla too. You can read it on Hoopla.
Hoopla. I recommend that. One other thing I will say, we didn't get into too much. One of my favorite things about the character, at least the Silver Age character, and to a certain degree the Golden Age, depending on when you're reading it and what stories. I love also the idea of like a superhero couple. Especially when it doesn't break up left and right or have all this drama. Like the Silver Age version of like this loving couple who fight crime together, and I think that's cool.
They were one of the first married couples. Yeah, they were married before Reed and Sue. They were there before Reed and Sue even existed. The Silver Age Hawkman and Hawkgirl.
Yeah. Audience, if you're interested in the stuff we read, Hoopla has the Jeff Johns run, and it has the Robert Venditti run, and it has Hawkworld.
Wow,
unfortunately, it
all good stuff.
Doesn't have any of the other stuff we spoke about, so you'll have to go to your local LCS.
There you go.
Maybe get some back issues, or maybe go eBay.
Shadow the Hawk. Yeah, it's for that.
Yeah, so you'll have to go out and search for it, but based on what these our two Thanagarian experts have given us, it's stuff worth looking up and searching for and finding. So, Listening audience, we thank you so much for joining us for this long-awaited History of Hawkman. I hope you've left this podcast educated like I have been on the character, interested. I'm going to go check out the Jeff Johns run. I'm excited to read that since I'm able to do that. But of course, I could not have done this episode or brought this episode to you without all of the expert panel. So thank you, Joe.
Thank you, James, for this Herculean task of finally getting this group together. So we really appreciate it. Thanks. Yes. Thank you, James. And thank you, Jack and Keith.
Yes, thank you, Jack, so much.
So thank you. As you said, years in the making. And just for the fans, this is Keith and I, our first pairing, but not the last. So yes. So
really? Is this the first? Oh man, I've lost track of this would be a special exciting.
So this is that also years in the making. So there's so many firsts here. So yeah.
That's why I wasn't missing this one. When James sent me the text that Jackie, you were available, I'm like, I'm in, we're doing it.
Yeah, that's what I said.
I'm quitting my job. I'm not working tonight.
I'm leaving my family.
If this episode of the podcast was a comic book issue, this would be a collector's item with the two.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hollow foil bagged with a special card in it issue.
A Brave and the Bold team up.
Yeah. And thank you very much, Keith, for all your Hawkman knowledge.
Thank you all. This was a great pleasure. I loved it.
Listening audience, obviously, if you have your thoughts about Hawkman, you're going to check out some books. You can leave comments however you're listening to this episode. We thank you for joining us, and we will talk to you on the next one.